All right, guys, welcome back to the Land Talk Podcast. We're on episode 5 today. Still got Justin here. We're talking legal tracts now. So, Justin, lead us away on that. What have you seen on legal tracts lately, and kind of what issues do you see on that?
Okay, so it's very important to make sure before you purchase a property that it is a legal tract that you can get permits on to build. Because most of us, when we buy property, we don't just want a tent camp on it, unless it's hunting property, but we want to improve it in some way. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by getting, in the county, you got to get a septic permit, right? So that's a pretty important thing. If your property is not legally subdivided, either by meets and bounds or by plat, the county is going to deny a permit. And just because a property is a tax parcel, if you go to the appraisal district and you find a property and it shows it as a tax parcel, that does not necessarily mean it is a legal parcel to get permits on, to obtain permits. Okay? So that's really important to keep in mind. If you go through MLS and you're looking at properties, there are dozens of properties listed by agents who may not know any better that are not legal tracts. And title companies usually accept to city and county development ordinances in their Schedule B, and so they'll close all day and all night on properties that may not be legal, and you don't know that until you buy it, you get down the road, and you can't get a permit.
Right. So when you get on like the CAD map, and typically like the county appraisal districts, they're going to have a map. It's going to show you some rough guidelines. How much can you trust those lines, and how much does that come into play when you're looking at a property before you get a survey and stuff?
So generally, they're going to be close. The boundary lines are going to probably be within 10 to 20 feet. On the survey side, I get calls probably 2-3 times a week from people saying, my neighbor's lot is encroaching on my property. The boundary line on the county CAD map is going through my house. Well, the boundary line on the CAD map may be going through your house, but in reality, it doesn't. So you can use it for a general gauge, but you can't. It's not survey grade.
Right.
That way.
So on these tax lots, so there's a chance that you could get on the appraisal district and find a lot that, I guess, for tax purposes may be correct. They're taxing this person or entity on this item, but that doesn't guarantee that it's been legally divided through all the proper channels, correct?
So you can go onto the tax map and you'll see a shape. They use shape files on these tax maps. And the legal description of it will say the north half of lot 5. Okay? That's a red flag. When you see that, that's a red flag. You should say to yourself, why is it the north half of lot 5? This is a platted lot, and yet it's not described as a replat of lot 5. It's just called the north half of lot 5. Then you have to go and look at the deed, and you have to see when it was subdivided, or if it was actually subdivided and described. A lot of times municipalities have grandfather dates where if a property was subdivided prior to that date, then it doesn't have to meet the current regulations, right? So if this was done in 1960, maybe it is a legal tract. If this was done in 2022, it's probably not going to be a legal tract. So you just have to really know what you're looking at. And then thirdly, you're going to have to look at the deed to see what meets and bounds description is on there, if any. And then that'll kind of give you an inkling of whether or not it's going to be a legal tract.
Right. So if you're looking at kind of a more lot and block system over the rural stuff here, if you kind of assume that maybe, let's say you're looking at a description that says the north half of lot 8 or whatever, does that kind of lead you to assume that if the north half is wrong, that the south half is probably wrong as well?
Well, it could be the north half. It could have been somebody had a 50% interest in a property, and they didn't. The family members didn't want to pay taxes on everything, so they split it up for tax. The county will take your money any way they can get it, but and they'll give you a tax parcel ID number for it. And likewise, there could be a tax parcel that's shown as a large piece of property, but the legal description of it could be lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, block A. And when you go in there and look at it, it looks like one big shape. When you actually look at how it's described, there's 5 lots. You can put 5 homes on those 5 lots. So it can go both ways. You could luck out that way, or it could be bad, and you could not be able to get a permit.
Right. So once you have a sneaking suspicion that maybe you're buying part of a lot and you don't know if it's legal or not, run me down the road of trying to figure out if it's legal, and then run me down the road of if it's not legal, how do you try to fix it?
First of all, find a good land agent that knows what is going on, because so many realtors out there don't understand this process, right? So in real estate school, they cover surveys and land for about 20 minutes of one day, and it's not covered well at all. So you got to find someone who's knowledgeable, and who could tell you, this is not going to be a legal tract. I think I spend more time telling my buyers, don't buy this. I'm a horrible salesman. I say, don't buy this because you're not going to be able to utilize it the way you want to. And, another agent might say, let's write an offer on it today. So, you just have to figure out what the client wants to utilize that property for, and then kind of work your way back. If all you want to do out there is go hunt, then that's one thing. But generally, when you get into larger tracts, you can subdivide by meets and bounds without platting, and it's not as big of an issue. So,
right. So what about if you find one that is incorrectly divided?
So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to the county, and you're going to want to ask them, is this a legal tract? And you can go to the Development Services Department, and they can look into it for you and tell you yes or no. And you're going to want to do that either before you go under contract on this property, or while you're in your due diligence time period, your option period on the property. So that's number one. If it is an illegal subdivision, then it's your duty to inform the seller that it's an illegal subdivision, and then really they should do the right thing and take it off the market. I guess I've got one short story of where this happened to me. I was looking at property for personal use, and I found a 5-acre tract of land in a platted subdivision that was subdivided by meets and bounds for a family partition, which it depends on the county if that's allowed. In this case, it was grandfathered in. However, the son lived on the back 5 acres, and they were trying to sell the front 5 acres. I looked at it. Now, it had a house, it had a septic, and everything else like that. That's great. What if the septic system ever went out? If the septic system ever went out, and I tried to get a new permit for a septic, I would be immediately denied by the county, and they'd say you'd have to plat. I approached the county. I asked them. Their reply to me was, that's an illegally subdivided tract. You can buy it, but you could never get a permit. I wrote an offer on it, and I told the listing agent, hey, I'll buy this for significantly less than the asking price, and I'll plat it, which is a pretty big value because platting is not inexpensive. And the agent pretty much told me to go fly a kite, and they were going to list it the way they wanted to list it. And close to a year later, that listing expired and it was never sold.
Right. So you may run into a case here that maybe it's unfixable, right? I mean, the city or county, whoever it is, could come back and say that we're not going to let you plat it in the way that you want it to, right?
It's possible. I've run into cases where a guy called me and he spent his life savings. He sold his house. He bought an RV, and he spent his life savings on 2 acres in a municipality. It was in the city limits. And he went to go get a permit. The county or the city told him you need to plat, but it doesn't meet their minimum platting requirements, and they will not issue a plat of that property. So he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this piece of property and an RV, and all he can do is park that RV on there, and that's it. He could never ever build because the city would never approve a plat in the configuration that property was in.
Right. And I feel like our job as agents and brokers, we're supposed to lead our buyers, let's say buyers in this case more often than not, but our job is to lead them in the right direction. And I feel like this is one of the scary things about real estate, because you're dealing with a lot of money, a lot of dreams, a lot of time. And so
you want to lead your buyers in the right way, and you want to lead your sellers in the right way to tell them, look, you can sell this, but maybe not in the way that they want to. And they don't always want to hear that, but sometimes they need to hear it before they get too deep into a transaction.
Yeah, and I felt this just stresses the point, when you're going to buy a property or sell a property for that matter, it really comes down to, do you have a good agent or a good broker? Are you depending on your surveyor, and do you have a title company? And I think those are kind of the three things that really make up a property, to where you can make really safe, informed decisions. Because if you take one of those out of the equation, you can very quickly buy a property that you may not be able to use for what you thought for. And we're talking about legal tracts here, but it could be the property had restrictions that now they can't use it. I mean, there's a lot of intended purposes for people. And I think there's a lot of things that could stop you from using it that you may not know about if you're not, trying to use the right tools to figure out if it's right for you.
And be very, very careful about what surveyor you pick, not just what realtor you pick, what surveyor you pick. There are surveyors out there that will just go out and write a meets and bounds description of something. It'll get recorded in the deed, and you'll think a surveyor surveyed it. It's no problem. But if they didn't go through the correct channels and get the correct approvals for that survey, then it could not be worth the paper it was drawn on.
Right, and at that point, there's bad title companies. I mean, we've used some of those. I mean, we've had commitments. We talk about Schedule A, B, those things. I've had Schedule Bs where they have maybe 20 or 30 additional exceptions that didn't apply to the property, but because it had a certain person's last name that lived nearby, they just kind of lumped it all in and assumed it applied when it didn't. So you can go get one property and you can get title work done by two different title companies, and there's a chance they're going to be different. And so that's concerning. So that all gets back to the, choose the right people to work with, and make sure you get led the right direction. So
that's why you want to get a land agent, not just your everyday realtor.
Yeah, that's it. And I think there's just a lot going on behind the scenes. We see a lot of legal descriptions every day. So what wouldn't be a red flag to some folks would be a red flag to us. I think we run into those all the time. Not only on legal tracts, but for access and all kinds of stuff. So it's just kind of one of the more intricate details of working with land. It's just a little different. So, all right, guys, that wraps up episode 5, talking about legal tracts. Catch us on episode 6.